Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. It's official. If there had been any sliver of a doubt that the Republican Party had been fully and completely co-opted by Donald Trump, even after the election loss, even after the riots, well, it's over now. If there's any debate that this was a party of ideas to a party bent on power and power alone for Donald Trump and he alone to wield, well, those doubts are all gone tonight, period, end stop. The Republican House Conference today booting its conference leader and number 3 person in the House, conservative Liz Cheney, from leadership this morning, doing so in as cowardly a way as they could. Cheney's only crime? Her refusal to back Donald Trump and the the lie that led to the deadly Capitol riot and has split our nation even further. We're going to have a lot of insight and analysis on this and a bit of a historical context. We'll be joined also by the Washington Post's Dana Milbank in just a moment. He was there today when the vote went down. But let's start with this morning's mayhem. And for that, let's turn to senior political correspondent Andrew Whitman.
Well, Rich, as we've been reporting for some time, today's vote and the removal of Cheney was a done deal, especially after the leaders above Cheney announced their support for someone else. But there were some surprises this morning. Cheney reportedly made her case to her conference, then was booted by a voice vote, no roll call, so there's no record of who voted for or against her or what the vote total was. It's the opposite of the vote that kept Cheney in leadership back in February. The meeting lasted just 20 minutes, and after being voted out, Cheney exited the room, walking through her fellow Republicans to get out, the same people who had just voted her out. Earlier in the meeting, Cheney again criticized Trump. Her colleagues responded by booing her. By most indications, Cheney told the conference many of the same things she told reporters after the vote was done, like what she said to them about Donald Trump.
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office. We have seen the danger that he continues to provoke with his language. We have seen his lack of commitment and dedication to the Constitution, and I think it's very important that we make sure whomever we elect is somebody who will be faithful to the Constitution.
Cheney also spoke about her vision for the future of the GOP and how the party should move forward.
We must go forward based on truth. We cannot both embrace the big lie and embrace the Constitution. And going forward, the nation needs it. The nation needs a strong Republican Party. The nation needs a party that is based upon fundamental principles of conservatism. And I am committed and dedicated to ensuring that that's how this party goes forward, and I plan to lead the fight to do that.
She also shared her hopes that the GOP returns to its roots and again becomes the party of Reagan, Bush, McCain, and even Dick Cheney.
It is an indication of where the Republican Party is, and I think that the party is in a place that we've got to bring it back from. And we've got to get back to a position where we are a party that can fight for conservative principles, that can fight for substance. We cannot be dragged backward by the very dangerous lies of a former president.
But at least today, her party was not listening. Their ears, it would seem, are only open to one man. And naturally, that man could not hold his tongue or his contempt for his fellow Republican. Quote, Liz Cheney is a bitter, horrible human being, wrote Donald Trump in a moment totally lacking self-awareness. She has no personality or anything good having to do with politics or our country. The woman Trump wants to replace Cheney with, expected to be elevated to the position later this week. Upstate New York Congresswoman Liz Stefanik, who again was a moderate who backed John Kasich over Trump in 2016 and voted against the Trump tax cuts. She announced her formal candidacy for Cheney's old job today. Republicans will meet tomorrow and are expected to elect Stefanik on Friday, though some speed bumps are appearing. Texas Republican Chip Roy among the conservatives now complaining about Stefanik's record. But conservatives are outnumbered now by Trumpists in the House, as evidenced by this tweet from Montana's Matt Rosendale. He sent out the mission accomplished shot from George W. Bush's Iraq War speech after the Cheney vote, ignoring how much worse that quagmire got after that victory was declared. And while we don't know how many Republicans voted today to keep Cheney in her leadership position, there were precious few who spoke up for her publicly. One who did, fellow Trump critic Adam Kinzinger, said the big argument to axe her was party unity.
Look, I'm all for unity. I'm all for unity and truth, truth cannot coexist with lies. Truth cannot coexist with falsehood. You cannot unify with that. And I think that's what Liz has been saying. So thank you, everybody. I'll tell you, it was a sad day. What do you think?
Rich?
Unbelievable, Andrew. Thank you. And for more on this morning's events and what they mean moving forward, let's turn to a man who was just outside the room where this went down this morning, Dana Milbank, columnist for the Washington Post and longtime friend of the program. And Dana, can I just say how much of a spineless, sissy move by McCarthy with this voice vote? I mean, put your big boy pants on. You're going to do this. Put your name to it. I mean, how weak.
Right. He didn't want people to see that, in fact, Liz Cheney does have quite a bit of support within the caucus. She was going to lose the vote anyway, everybody thinks, but she was going to get a sizable amount of support. There were also plenty of people in the room ready to speak for her in support, but McCarthy had another plan. He wanted to sweep it under the rug. The irony, of course, is that he, in announcing that he wanted to oust Cheney, he said that this is a big tent party, even as he was casting somebody out from the tent, and not just somebody, the number 3 leader in the party and the daughter of the vice president and a well-known stalwart conservative.
What are the consequences of today? Forget the political metrics about where the Republican Party goes from here, but the messaging about the illegitimacy or the legitimacy to question the legitimacy of the election and the insanity we see playing out in the Arizonas now and the further voter disenfranchisement just feeding into the big lie and everything that will come out of it.
Yeah, well, look, Richard, virtually nobody in that Republican caucus actually believes that Trump won the election and it was stolen from him. I think we can start with that, but virtually nobody will say that publicly because they believe they cannot have this rift in the party. It will cost them control of the House and perhaps the Senate in 2022. So they've made just this crass political calculation that they're willing to accept this lie to paper over the differences in the party. And now they've got to go further, and they've got to banish people who are not going along with the program of accepting the lie. I think within the Republican caucus in Congress, they're now going to be lockstep in not speaking out against Trump, not speaking out against the big lie. But you do have now outside the tent, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, a few others who are actually speaking out and saying, no, this isn't, conservative not to respect the rule of law. This isn't, what the Republican Party was supposed to be all about. And it doesn't seem that the attention does get through to some Republican voters. There's a little bit of movement in that direction that, they're seeing that the Republicans are basically all rallying around a lie.
Yesterday I spoke to A.B. Stoddard, and she said which is there's a miscalculation, or was at least by McCarthy, that there wasn't a sizable number of Republicans who weren't willing to go along to get along. But she also said Liz Cheney's been keeping receipts here. And if she thinks that this is the end of it, in many ways she could be somewhat liberated along with Kinzinger and a few others here. This is going to be painful for McCarthy and others, particularly if, as we expect, there eventually is going to be a January 6th commission.
Mm-hmm. Right, and who knows, is McCarthy brought to testify? He's an incredibly weak leader here. He's just sort of blowing whichever way the wind blows. He was critical of Trump after the January 6th insurrection, then realized, I better get back on his good side or I'm going to have problems with, my leadership here. He's being led by the base of the party rather than actually being a leader. Being a leader, at least until recently, has meant telling the truth, and he's just decided not to do that. So it's hard to see how this, in the long run, works out well for McCarthy. But it was just an extraordinary exercise in cowardice, the entire episode this week.
Somebody's making a miscalculation here. I heard Lindsey Graham a couple days ago say, listen, for anybody who thinks we can win as a party without Trump, you're wrong. And then I saw Governor Hogan from Maryland, also a Republican, who said, am I the only one who's doing math here? We lost the House, we've lost the Senate, and we lost the White House with Trump. How's this way working for us? somebody's not, doing a head count the right way. I know it's too early to tell, but I don't get how Republicans, when they had the chance, like that old line, every time I'm out, they keep dragging me back in. They were out. They chose to drag Trump back in after January 6th. I don't get the math. Forget the morality out of this.
Well, I think they're talking about two different time frames. And, the ones like McCarthy are saying, you know what, we can't afford to have this squabble right now. We're very close to taking our House. Look, the Republicans are likely to take over the House just given the historical patterns and how close it is. They don't want to screw that up. So that's what they're talking about there. But the long-term issue is entirely different. What they're doing is, basically tying themselves to a smaller and smaller share of the electorate that's shrinking and shrinking. So they are driving the Republican Party into oblivion over the long term, but they're doing this because they believe, and there's some logic to it, that just by accepting this lie and silencing the differences, that they can prevail in just this next election, just one more time.
Whatever you say about McConnell, he can play chess when others play checkers. Why did he say what he did on January 6th? I know he didn't vote to impeach, but he made it clear January 6th was the fault of Trump. And if you're a prosecutor out there and you want to bring a criminal case, have at him. Mm-hmm. Why did he do that? If he was going to go radio silent after and allow a civil war to unfold here in his party, it doesn't make sense to stick your neck out if you weren't going to keep it out.
I don't think he really stuck his neck out. He was the guy who announced before the vote that the Senate didn't have the authority to convict Trump. He basically sealed Trump's fate in terms of not being convicted by the Senate. And then I think he gave that speech that was basically a sop to Republican Party donors who are worried about things like insurrections in the United States Capitol. So he's not exactly a profile in courage either. But then you have McCarthy, who said things like McConnell said after the insurrection, and then completely reverses himself and goes to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. So, neither one is exactly a profile in courage, but it's just McCarthy right now. He really looks like he's just blowing whichever way the breeze goes.
And by the way, as we learned even this week, I know you report as much, Adam Kinzinger told everybody that he actually warned days prior to the 6th that we could have violence on our hands in Washington. One more thing that may or may not come out if we ever get this commission. But finally, it's amazing what we can get used to, as they say, Dana, but we have one of the two major political parties in this country who is willing to purge from their ranks someone who is telling the truth that everyone knows empirically is the truth. Can you put in some historical context just how, forget about crazy, how damning and dangerous it is what they did today?
Richard, I think we're way beyond any sort of historical context. There is none for this sort of thing when a president is going on about this big lie about the election. But just think of what they're doing here. They've cast out Cheney, who is a very reliable conservative, and they are apparently going to replace her with Elise Stefanik, who is very much at the liberal end of the Republican Party. So they're completely jettisoning what they used to believe in as their principles in favor of being this cult of Trump. I think it says it all right there.
Amazing day, but amazing months or years, however, whatever time frame we want to use. Dana, I always appreciate your time, though. Thank you.
Thanks.